to read a couple of passages. Typically when I moderate or speak, I also like to tell people what I'm reading. And right now, I'm reading a book called The Politics of Aesthetics by Jacques Rancière. I promise you we will not stay in the theoretical, but we will start there. Aristotle states that a citizen is someone who has a part in the act of governing and being governed. However, another form of distribution precedes this act of partaking in government, the distribution that determines those who have a part in the community of citizens. A speaking being, according to Aristotle, is a political being. If a slave understands the language of his rulers, however, he does not possess it. Just a couple more of those. Plato thereby singles out two main models, two major forms of existence and of the sensible effectivity of language. Those are writing and the theater, which are also structure-given forms for the regime of the arts in general. The aesthetic regime of politics is strictly identical with the regime of democracy, the regime based on the assembly of artisans, inviolable written laws, and the theater as institution. Plato contrasts a third, good form of art with writing and the theater, and that is the choreographic form of the community that sings and dances its own proper unity. And the last one. Furthermore, this is not some theatrical ideal of the new human being that seals the momentary alliance between revolutionary artists and politics. It is initially an interface created between different artists and politics. It is initially in the interface created between different mediums, in the connections forged between poems and their typography or their illustrations, between the theater and its set designers or poster designers, between decorative objects and poems, that this newness is formed that links the artist who abolishes figurative representation to the revolutionary who invents a new form of life. I would say that I am an IETM virgin, but actually I spoke at a meeting in Glasgow about 8 years ago. I don't personally profess to be a part of theater, except a small piece I constructed a few days ago to cross the Allenby Bridge into Palestine. So I will probably flub up lots of theatrical references, and I used Rancière to help me stay on track. I'd like to introduce you to the panelists. What I've asked the panelists to do is to keep their first interventions within 5 minutes so that we will have plenty of time to talk. And I've asked them not to say too much about their organizations because I think we can Google those and you can draw them out in your questions, but to hit on an alliance that they have been building if they are artists outside of the arts, and if they are lawyers or activists, something that took them inside the arts. As I said before, we would like to show in the last few minutes of the panel a real live, organic, unfolding alliance. And for that, I'll just shift gears a little bit. Can someone tell me when we're at 4:45, when should we go to, just so I can get my timing right? 6:30. I'm going to watch you, audience members, to make sure you have the energy to go. That's an hour and 45 minutes, but we have a 6 and make. talk about today reaches back up to the free expression theme that is the theme of this meeting. And I agree with Ahmed that being able to work because you're paid to do that work is essential in order to express. So we'll talk to Ahmed first after I run through these names. Aurélien Zuki is with the collective Karabakh. We'll see a piece of his theater tonight. And he's also working on the Hamana Art Center you see on the tablet, the notepad that you have in your bags. I've not seen a piece of your theater, Leon, but what I did see one day when Julian first introduced me to the city of Beirut after a week of conferencing was how you convene the community on a set of stairs in the city to ask them what the festival would be about. I know that later in your work with Hamana that you're working with a businessman on how to run a space that's just up the mountains from Beirut, and I think that maybe you've even negotiated a few years of using that space, which I think is also really important to bring up. Burcu Yilmaz from Turkey. A Corner of the World Festival is a relatively new festival. I asked Burcu if she would tell us a little bit about their ambitions, and she has some questions she'd like to ask because they're getting started and there's some alliances in their future that she'll tell us that they're thinking about. Might also be nice for you to tell us a little bit about I believe it's the OHAL, the state of emergency that Turkey is now under, and what that means for your work. Mahmoud Othman from Egypt is representing AFTI, or the Association of Freedom of Thought of Expression. You heard Mahmoud speak the other day about the Museum of Censorship, but I'd like for him to go a little bit further in how the legal community is working in this region, and specifically in Egypt, in relation to the past 5 years, how laws are constantly in flux, and look forward to hearing from you, Mahmoud. Nayla Jaja, I remember that by Jaja Gabor, by the way, is a lawyer and activist, and she wants to bring up a critical issue she has an issue, and she wants to bring up the issue of smart advocacy and lobbying. She's been a part of a small advocacy group along with Hanan and Julian and others that have asked the Ministry of Culture to remove the prior censorship law. And I think those of us who attended the performance Thursday night heard the minister say that he would be taking it further. So let's help them hold him accountable. She also mentioned some laws, 3 different laws that they helped to pass in 2008 that then came later to a benefit in 2011 when some art spaces were being closed locally. And she'll tell us about that. And lastly, you know a little bit already about Zaina Dakash and her work with Catharsis, the Center for Drama Therapy. I think her work stands for itself. So I'm going to hand over the mic to Ahmed and ask him to tell us a little bit about his work. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Je préfère parler en français parce que l'arabe tunisien est incompréhensible pour nos amis orientaux. Il m'a demandé de présenter notre expérience et de parler sur les partenariats en 5 minutes. Et donc j'ai eu l'idée de présenter le réseau dont je suis le fondateur et on est en train de le gérer. C'est un réseau d'artistes freelance en Tunisie. Mais à travers ce réseau,
of creating partnerships with different actors in the cultural arena in Tunisia, especially the state, and through the state, through ministers, through the administrations that run this kind of work that is informal. Actually, I was a freelancer, and I preferred to stay as a freelancer to gain some money. And then I had some friends, and we were helping each other to work in the audiovisual domain that needs a lot of people. It's not an individual kind of work, it's more of a group work. Then with time, we discovered that in Tunisia, there were a lot of talents, a lot of competences, especially in the past 10 years. So many people are working in the informal sector. So this informal sector and not being recognized by the state creates some instability, especially on the socio-economic level, and to be able to be paid and to live out of our arts. This is why many of these artists had to leave the arts and go work somewhere else where there is a stable salary. So we started working on this topic, and we found ourselves obliged to leave our art aside and work more on management. Because today we are managing 1,300 freelancers, artists in Tunisia, and they produce, and we have universities and institutes that produce more than 2,000 graduates in arts per year. So it's very difficult for them to have a salary and to have a fixed salary. So they all try to work in the informal market. So we left our art to work on the management. Since the beginning, we understood that management needs to be done by managers and not by artists. And this is the problem in many associations and organizations in Tunisia, because the artists try themselves to manage their work, but they rely more on their inspiration and they don't have a clear methodology and an objective one. So the first partner that we tried to find was managers, and we wanted to work in the cultural sector, and we wanted other formations for the whole team. We wanted training for our team, trainings on how to manage a network, because we manage the network of freelancers. After that, we went to dig into the management of the network, and we found out that we needed to work on different sectors in the economic sector, so that we would have the creative economy and cultural economy, as well as on the finance, because freelancers didn't pay taxes. They had a problem in their invoices and with the state and with social security. So here we have the 4 ministries and the Ministry of Labor. So we started working to find partners from the state. Fortunately, in Tunisia, it's easy today, especially after the revolution, to access the ministers and the high officials, as long as our topic is seducing for them. And in Tunisia, after terrorism, we found that it was easier for us to find doors that were open. So we tried to convince the ministers and the officials and the administrations of our cause, but this changes quickly, because the minister stays in the ministry for 1.5 years. So we often have a change in our government and in our ministries, and it's not something easy. In the beginning, it worked for us, but now with this second transitional government, and we have a new government that is only 1 month old, so we have to do all the work all over again for 3 months. And we know that the new minister also will not stay long. So we redo this work. This is something that we have to do. It's tiring, it's exhausting, but we have to do it. So we have to take this path to be able to find regulations for our work as artists, and to be able to live through art and have a stable life. And this is why we've also decided to work only in Tunisia, on the Tunisian territories. The first reason is that because we don't have a lot of means, there's not a lot of us, and the number of artists is growing very fast. So then there will be a risk of losing everything if we were to open ourselves to other foreign partners, especially that the laws or the local context is atypical, and we cannot create partnerships with other people that are doing the same as us. Like in Canada, we have discussed with many people there, but also with English, but we don't have the same context when we want for our network to be built on the basis of the characteristics in our country. So we work in British Council, Goethe Institute, and Thaqafi for the training and to have more support for the administration, for researchers, and for events. So this is everything that I had to say. I can add a bit more later on, but I wanted now to respect the 5 minutes that you gave me. شكرا جزيلا. Now to respect the 5 minutes that you gave me. شكرا جزيلا أحمد. آمل أنك
I think what I'd like to bring up, because there's a question earlier today about what we felt, there's a gentleman on this side, I see you there, what we felt the arts were offering in situations like Syria and others. And what I want to bring up on this panel is artist power, the power that we as artists or we as arts administrators have to actually effectuate change. When I talked to Ahmed and when I talked to Nayla, I heard similar themes, and I think Nayla will bring this up as well, that we do have the power to chart our future. And what I like to remind artists when I work with them as an administrator is, don't be discouraged with the models that you create when they're not readily accepted by the system. The system will not readily accept our new models. It will try to reject them because they go against the status quo. So I want to thank you, Ahmed, for setting up a new model and sticking to it. I think you'll also see that the panelists today, with their various innovations in alliance building, propose an ecosystem of different ways to work with different partners. I'd also like to ask if there's a burning question. If anyone wants to shoot a question up here to Ahmed, I'll ask. You'll have this opportunity after each speaker. I won't always ask it, but if you have something you just must know, please ask. And if not, we'll move right along to Orion.
So I will speak as an artist, also maybe as a festival director, and I'm becoming more and more kind of cultural manager because the context where we evolve is pushing us to handle many things. So we created with other artists a collective 10 years ago with the need of going and meeting our different audience in this country. And the first alliance maybe that is more essential and crucial for us is the alliance with the audience. And from that, this is our starting point to grow all our projects. And in fact, we had the chance to go and tour and meet the different realities from one area to another between communities that don't share the same experience, the life experience, the same social, economical realities. We had the chance to build partnership all around the country, and we grow our discourse, our creative propositions in contact with these people. And what you mentioned about artists possibly being able to change the context around them, I would just add, because it's always a question, how are we building these partnerships in the trust, in the confidence, in a relation of trust, and maybe it's as a starting point to be able as well to be changed as well in these encounters, and to accept to be the one to be changed by these encounters. And yesterday in another subject, Rana spoke about fundings and the way to create this space of negotiation between funders and other structures. I think it's also part of our job as artists to create these spaces where we can express to people that we are also ready to change because they are giving us a lot, and they will give us their trust because they will hear this ability also for me to move and to step towards them and build a process or build a project or propose an experience built upon these encounters. So maybe it's a bit general like this, but from that we have been led to create a festival that we don't like to call it festival because it's also based on relations, human relation between us first and the neighborhood around us where it all started, involving the community in this cultural dynamic, inviting different people to make this happen and to take part in making a free festival for free in a city where it's not so easy. And this event became in fact an invitation where people are invited, where another relation is proposed that is not a consumption of art and beautiful performance, but where there are people inviting others to share something and to resonate together in this. So maybe we will also develop later in detail.
Wow, these panelists are very studious to the 5 minutes. I was expecting a lot of rule breakers, and then I had to have a bell or something. Tennessee Williams said, he said famously, "We live in a burning building, and the only thing that will save us is love." Gramsci said it a little bit differently. He said, "The old is dying, and the new cannot yet be born, and we live in the terrible interregnum." Orion and everyone on the panel, I would suggest that these models that we're presenting are the only way forward. So again, I encourage you, and I would like to hand it over now to Beirut to tell us about her work with Honoring the World Festival.
So hello, I'm from Turkey and I'm the only one, I think, in this meeting from Turkey. So I think it has been something in a way, like how we move from, like, I feel in a state of isolation in many ways. Because I want to give you some facts before starting my little presentation. So Turkey is not in Creative Europe anymore. It was Turkey's decision. I don't know the official declaration of Turkey, but it is said that because that Creative Europe funded a project, a concert, which supports the fact that which actually says the sacred word, like forbidden word, Armenian genocide. So I think that's the reason. So we are in a state of emergency. So there are a couple of media channels which have been closed in the last days. So we have some artists in prison again, etc., etc. So all the things I said actually is about the region, like relation with Caucasus, relationship with Europe, relationship with Middle East, relationship with Balkan region. So we have some other issues there. So Turkey is in the middle of all these things. And I'm questioning myself always, which part of the world I'm really belonging to. Am I Caucasus? Am I Middle Eastern? Am I European? Am I... Thank you. So am I coming from the Balkan? Am I belong to the Balkan region, etc. So anyway, this is like a corner of the world. We are here we are a region, and all these regions actually, Caucasus, Turkey, Middle East, Balkans, they are not really connected. So the idea of the festival is really connect all these regions to each other. They are connected to Europe in many ways, but these regions are not connected to each other, we believe. So we started this festival. And just asking to give an example how we create alliances, just give an example through our work. It's that actually maybe for the first time in Turkey we are bringing different funders like Mofradat, AFAK, French Institute, Dutch Consulate, and some other institutions that I forgot to name maybe, but so this is like the first time that all these funders from different regions of like different neighbors from Turkey come together to fund a project. So this is already a good alliance, I think, to start with. And this year the focus was on Middle Eastern artists. So we invited many artists from Middle East, from Beirut, from Iraq, from Syria, and we also invited artists from Europe who has its origins. So this was also like a good starting point to create alliances between different artists and people. And as you said, actually, we are not naming us as a festival, we are like a platform, because we want to do more than just organizing a festival. We want to create a platform for researchers, academicians, artists, and everyone who are interested in the region, and like going further from the region to other countries, like relationship between Europe, etc. So this is like the main point of the festival. It's going on now actually. Now I'm here, I'm happy at the same time, a little bit sad that I'm missing my festival that's happening right now in Turkey. But I find that it's important actually to talk about my festival too. So I don't want to talk more. I'm stressed because I don't want to take 5 minutes. But I'm here, and any artist from the region who want to know more about the festival, myself, etc. I'm outside, I'll be at the rooftop, I'll be everywhere as much as possible. Thank you.
We each need a table for our accoutrement. As I said, I was expecting people to surpass the 5 minutes. Please feel free to push it to the edge. But also, we expect that a really lively conversation will follow. So, without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Mahmoud to tell us a little bit about the work of AFTI. We heard some of your work yesterday, so why don't you pick some examples that you weren't highlighting yesterday when you spoke?
Allow me first to say that 2 years ago we have started working on the program on freedom of expression in our association, and since then we are thinking about how state is dealing with the creative persons because it's excluding them from dealing with the artists. The same goes for the lawyers, for instance. Therefore, we started our alliances with cultural centers. It was because it was the first adverse effect of the state's violence against the institutions. We have gathered a large number of centers around this coalition, and the state started to deal in a legal way with these associations. These groups have shown a number of problems. Unfortunately, communication between cultural centers dealing with different kinds of arts is really weak, and they are always afraid of talking about their problems in the media in order for the state not to be attacking these associations or these centers. And it was impossible for any association to have a legal or a formal situation. Therefore, we started establishing local partnerships and alliances, and afterwards we have shed light on a number of problems that, for instance, the problem with Mashroua Layla, a group or team in Jordan. The problem was the following. When they wanted to run the celebration. The state said hours before that you cannot run your celebration or the festival because you do not have the license. So therefore it's very important to have a legal support. It's not enough for the associations to be communicating one with the other. We are in need of a legal support. Legal support is very important because it can contribute in solving some of the problems, mainly the granting of licenses and the modalities of granting licenses. I will not be saying that everything is optimal and that legal support is always beneficial or effective. Today, cooperation or communication between the association and the state is very important. We have started talking about the missions of the Mawrid, which is a cultural center, and how can the association benefit the artists. I'm talking here about a direct or an indirect support for the artists. The direct support encompasses following up the cases and the inquiries as well as legal advice. As for the indirect support, we will be keeping pace with the laws that are promulgated by the state in order to prevent the possible problems. We were talking here about the penal code that considered, as Mohab said, that street art is a kind of terrorism, and we have to deal with it according to the anti-terrorism law. And the same goes for the definition of some kinds of crimes that are not clearly defined. Therefore, we will be able to deal with these laws in a sound manner. We have to define a certain clear vision. We have to define the categories with which we are going to deal, including artists and other players, through advertising and through supporting or dealing with the trade unions. We are trying to establish such an alliance, and I hope that I was beneficial in what I presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahmoud.
شكرا محمود. في الواقع أنا أعرف أن معرضه مهم جدا، وأذكركم أن محمود وأنا
I'd also like to add a little bit more to the importance of working with lawyers regionally. Some of us in the room have been working recently on the case of a Yemeni culture worker who has been stuck in Jordan. We now know that there is a law in Jordan that taxes or fines Yemenis for each day that they overstay their visa. So while he does have a safe haven to go to in the near future, I believe the fines have mounted to near $10,000 that he will have to pay the government before leaving. We know that Al-Mawrid was forced to stop its activities in Egypt, and we see that a regional approach has come from that. But we also know that in countries that go through these moments of change, not only Egypt, Sudan would also be an example, that the government can force all NGOs to re-register. And the power of making all NGOs re-register is the power to stop their activities and also to control the international funders who would fund them when they are appropriately registered. I recently spoke to a female activist in the downtown of Cairo, and she told me that it was very important to know simple strategies because the police would often, because she is known, come to her door and ask to see her lease. This is also has a dash of sexism in it as well, but what she knew to say is, my lease is with my lawyer. Would you like to go to that office or have him come here? It was a simple strategy that gave her something to say when this sort of powerful figure shows up at the door at an unannounced hour. Thank you again, Mahmoud, for your work, and we'll hear a little bit more later. Naila, are you ready to extend the legal discussion?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk in Arabic.
العربية لأن الترجمة الفورية إلى الإنجليزية متأخرة. Good evening, I am Naila Jaja. I am a lawyer and I will be brief because I prefer to have a discussion more than giving an intervention. Practically speaking, I want to clarify something. I am not a member in any association. I am since 2008, 2009, when I started working as a lawyer. It was important for me to work on cultural policies, and I had the chance to work with Hanan and with a group of local associations. We started working on the cinema, on theater, and on censorship, the pre-censorship and post-censorship related to the political field. We have worked for more than 1 year and a half, and I did not imagine that we have such a number of cultural or artistic works that are put under censorship. And I don't think that I think that we have a high level of censorship, so because we take stock at the archives on the reasons according to which the general security is following some persons or censoring some books or some artistic works. It was very important in order for us to get to know the things we are working on, and we established alliances with these associations to work on different law projects, especially when talking about the pre-censorship and cinema, and to regulate the cinema and the theater as well, and the press and the media. And I think that yesterday we have animated this initiative while presenting the law bill through the Minister of Culture, because we have cooperated with him in drafting this law, and we hope that when the Parliament will be reactivated and will legislate, we hope that we will be able to push towards enacting such laws. We were also able to deal, as Mr. said, in 2008 a series of laws were published in the cultural sector. When he said, I have an issue, my issue in fact is in the cultural sector, and contrarily to any other sectors in Lebanon, there is no need to enact new laws. If we take a look at the laws already existing, and I'm talking about about cultural policies, there is a need to abolish some laws, but from one side, but from the other side, since 2008 and until now, we have a set of laws that if activated, cultural policies will be advanced. So we do not need, like in other sectors, the legislator to enact more laws or to take positive steps. And what's really strange is that the laws that were enacted in 2008, and contrarily to other issues in Lebanon, weren't the result of the pressure of the civil society or the cultural scholars, but it was a kind of bargaining between the two main blocs, March 14, March 18 blocs, and the MPs did not have any idea about the laws that were enacted or the laws that were passed, and they did have no idea on concerning the laws or the trade unions. In Lebanon, we have a trust fund for the artists, theoretically and in principle. The same goes for the law on cultural property, that through it we can preserve the material and immaterial heritage. I will not be entering into these details, but I always have question marks concerning the following. We have the legal tools concerning the cultural sector, but until now things are not moving in a general way. So we take individual initiatives, and as we have seen with Zena, many individual things or individual initiatives are taken, but we still cannot say that we have a comprehensive vision concerning the cultural sector in Lebanon. I will be brief, so I apologize for taking long. But I want to start the discussion with the following issue. As a lawyer or as a consultant, I am not working in an association or in an organization, and I prefer to be working with the artists or with the associations to be able to think together on how to build these initiatives or alliances. I am not representing a certain part or a certain block, but let's think all together, because I am attached to the law and to the arts at the same time. There's a problem. In fact, we have two problems. The first problem... No, it's fine. It's fine. No, it's fine. So I think we are facing two problems. The first one... She's borrowing some minutes from the other speaker. I think the first problematic is how individuals or cultural associations, how do they see the state, and especially the Ministry of Culture. I know that in Lebanon, it's difficult to be defending the state, and it's not the role I want to play. But according to me, building alliances is based on mutual interests. We have interests from different sides, and we have to see how we can cooperate in order to serve our mutual interests. Until now, we have some difficulties, except some initiatives. We refuse to deal with the state, to establish a dialogue with the state. Frankly speaking, if you want to talk about cultural policies, we have to start with the public sector. Since we have laws, we have to encourage and push towards the implementation of these laws by the ministry. Then I wouldn't have been able to work if she did not have a dialogue with the Ministry of Culture and the relevant authorities. She would have been imprisoned, and she couldn't make it to have access to the prison. So let's think about how can we deal with the ministries. We can, because if we deal with the ministries, they will say that we do not have the critique spirit, and we are dealing with an illegal state, let's say. So let's be smart in how to deal with the state. This is from one side. From the other side, when talking about establishing alliances between or inside the cultural sector in Lebanon, it's really strange that we have few Lebanese in the room with us, unfortunately. I don't think that we are thinking as individuals or as groups to establish alliances. So from the legal framework, 10 years ago and until now, we have more than 14,000 NGOs in Lebanon. This is a huge number. So each 3 individuals establish an NGO, they open a bank account, and it's done. And in the cultural sector, unfortunately, if we take a look at the associations publishing their funding sources, we can see that their balance sheet is superior to that of the Ministry of Culture. So let's think that we have to shoulder a certain responsibility in drafting the cultural policy. When talking about the legal framework, NGOs are a set of a number of individuals dealing with funding partners in order to be able to launch their activities. But we have other legal forms that can feed these alliances. And here I think about the trade unions, cooperatives, and other non-profit organizations that are able, through their internal tools or means, to protect their mutual interests and ensure the sustainability of the work, in order for us not to be relying solely on the funding partners. So regardless of the fact, regardless if we are dealing with Syrian refugees or not, let us distance ourselves from the policy of the funding partners. We are forgetting that we have self-sustainable internal tools that we can rely on. This is very important, I guess. I was highly philosophical, I think, and I apologize for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Naila.
شكرا نايلة.
And yesterday, Alma, I believe it was you who said that you believe that art should be the space where the most beautiful and most terrible things can happen and be played out. And since we're technically in that space right now, Zaina, I'm just going to say that your actors evoke some of my own prison fantasies, I have to admit. No? Okay. That's not working. But seriously, Zaina, thank you for your work, and I'd like to give you the stage now.
I'm not going to talk. I spoke already, and I've shown my work. So let's gain more time, maybe to discuss. Yeah, unless you want to know something very important. And I already, I think I summarized what are our partnerships. Government and government ministers, and so. I shall tell them.
And she convinces them to be very
True.
There is a burning question in my mind since we planified this session, and I discussed with Jolan, and now this question is burning more in my head. What's the difference between the cooperation and the partnership and an alliance? I think we should underline this in order to really going further.
I won't pretend to have the answer. I have some opinions, but what I'd like to do, and we'll pick up that answer directly, three things. Zaina, thank you for giving to the floor. There'll definitely be time to ask Zaina questions about her work. One thing I'd like to pick up, and it's a personal passion, is that Zaina, you, but many of the people here on the stage have entered the space of policy making with their work. And I truly believe that not only do artists have power, but that artists are often policymakers. Not just that they can be or that they inform policies, but that their work can actually effectuate policy. So I want to just highlight that as an example of what Zaina's work is an example of that. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to do a little bit of talking amongst the panelists. Maybe there's a question that one panelist wants to ask another. I'll start. I have a question for Beirut. I really feel that you didn't take enough time. I maybe scared you or I was sitting too close. So let me start by asking you a question, and I hope, Hanan, that it starts to dig into what you're saying. I think one way that one could respond to what you've asked, Hanan, is, are alliances necessarily the things that happen when money isn't available? Are they things that happen for solidarity's sake? Are they things that happen without hierarchies? I don't know that that's necessarily true, but it's one of the questions I would have. The specific question I'd like to ask Beirut, especially since we had a session this morning about networks, is, do you consider a platform political? We hear a lot these days the word platform. A biennale can be a platform. An event can be a platform. A website, a platform. And I'd like to know, because I also use that term sometimes, if it is a political word, and how might it relate to, say, alliances, as Hanan has asked specifically.
Thank you for the question. I think what we do is already very political, actually, because we take a side. We have a word like towards the current system. Let it be the government, let it be the current system in the world. Like the world is breaking, categorizing, labeling us. Like the states are labeling us, the system is labeling us, the fund givers are labeling us. And with our work, actually, we want to break these labels, like as like Caucasus artists, Middle Eastern artists, European artists, or like all these words are labeled for us, and actually we want to break them, and it's something beyond the system, I believe, so it's political, according to me. Like whatever we do, now we resist, so resistance is political anyway. So I think we have like a high political stand in our work. I don't know if it answers your question, but like what we do is already very revolutionary. I don't say that we are doing like the biggest thing in Turkey, but in this current state of life, let's say in Turkey, like bringing all these people from different parts of the region and creating all these networks, alliances. I don't really have the perfect answer for you as well, but for me an alliance is like a sustainable long-term cooperation, I believe. Like, for example, just to give an example, like as we are collaborating with French institutes, they don't give us like huge amount of money, but they understand the value of our work and they kind of support us in putting us in different networks, suggesting us to different kind of organizations and creating space for us and connecting us with different groups of people. So I think it's a good alliance for us, if I'm not wrong to describe alliance.
I'd like to keep that question. Just I see a hand in the back. I'm going to keep it up here on the stage for just a moment longer. I'd like to also say something in response to what Hanan has asked, because I do use the project that I make in Sao Paulo. I use the word platform to describe it, and that's why I wanted to ask that question. But also, I think that I do consider, I guess maybe in accepting to moderate this panel, I interpret alliance as a political thing. I interpret it as the thing you do with or without funding. We often are in these situations where partnerships are only activated when funding happens. And personally speaking, and I hear it in what Berger just said, that there are things that we must do without funding, and that maybe that's one way to interrogate this sort of alliance. But let's hear from some of the other folks on the panel, and if anyone wants to speak to alliance, the term, and then we'll break it up into the whole.
I'm not really great at just like giving speeches like this. I like more discussions like this, so now I feel more comfortable saying things. Actually, like you said political, I think breaking like the current system of funding relationship is already very political, I think. For example, in my work, I question always like, I will pass to a little bit mobility, but for example, for bringing a Lebanese artist to Turkey from Lebanon is more difficult than bringing a Lebanese artist who lives in France. So for example, changing this set of mind, like just putting this question in mind of people, is very important for me. Like, for an Armenian coming to Turkey, it's more difficult than bringing an Armenian who lives in the United States to Turkey, or things like this. Like, challenging all these kind of mobilities, relationships, it takes time, and I think it's very, very political. Because the world is categorizing people like this, people living there, people have this origin, people coming from this region, that region. So yeah, I think what we do is political, and which needs a lot of solidarity among people beyond states, I think. Because like, for example, Creative Europe, we are not in anymore, but does it mean that we can't really cooperate with European people? Of course we can, but how? So that's a question.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to the alliance before we hand it over to the crowd, break down the hierarchy?
It's on. بس لهلا كان يعني حكيت شوي عن هذا الموضوع انه انا يعني انتبهت انه عم نحكي عن تحالف، يعني العلمات هو تحالف. وانا نظرتي لما نقول تحالف يعني عم نقول انه في جهتين عندهم مصالح مختلفه، بس الشغل مع بعض حيأثر او حتكون مثل عنده ابعاد ايجابي بهذا الموضوع. بينما لما بنحكي بارتنرشيب ونحكي كوبريشن او شيء عمليا يعني بيكونوا في اتفاق على بروجي معين وبتدوب الاشياء.
Project.
بحس اساسي هيدا.
And I think that this is essential because when we clarify things, this will have an impact on the strategy we are using in order to apprehend things, especially when talking about alliances with official parties. You will have to be able to convince the Ministry of Culture about not only about the content, the importance of the content, but you have to convince the ministry that if they work with you, they will be practically giving a positive image through the ministry and through its place as a political or an official authority. This is, tactically speaking, this is very important, and this is highly beneficial if we are thinking about how a certain group will be lobbying in favor of changing laws.
حسنا. I will continue from where you stopped about the partnerships and mobility of artists, and also about what you said about partnerships with the state as if it was a conspiracy or something negative. Microphone, please. Yes, especially with all what's happening today, there is like a war between or with NGOs and civil society. I would like to invite you to think about this topic. Why have partnerships against and not partnerships for? Because it's said that it's the state that is supposed to be sometimes forbidding the artists from mobility, but partnerships could be based on conventions, based on agreements, and you lawyers, you know about this. And we can have also informal partnerships, like relationships between human beings that are working in the state in a way that this artist is not presenting a danger, is not a risk, and they will not be feeding the dispute, but ameliorating the landscape, the artistic landscape. So this is kind of an elastic work. It's kind of a therapy with these people that are sometimes considered as being psycho-rigid. But in reality, these are human beings just like us that have also other objectives or different objectives. But I think that we can work on this point, and this can have many advantages for the freedom of the artists, for their mobility, without having to be confronted with these people, but through creating partnerships with them. مهاد في الخلف ثم ألما وهنا. I have a question, a very important question that I always ask to myself. When we started working a year ago, when we were working in the street art, and we thought about what if something happened to us in the streets, what would we do? So we decided to work on the policies and laws that regulate the artistic expression in the public space. So we decided to create an alliance with the institutions that have an experience in this regard, so that if something bad happened to any of us, we would have this kind of solidarity. This way we would see what we need and what we're able to present to the decision makers. When we got to a phase where both studies were done, we tried to find decision makers, but we couldn't. Even the person who is in charge of the human rights committee in Egypt, he resigned because if he was to give any statement, he was going to be sent to jail. So we had only the Ministry of Defense in front of us. So we had only we could only meet with the Minister of Defense, Layla. You were speaking about the rape that happened by the British soldiers. You could also speak about the virginity test that we heard about now in Egypt. What would be done to you? So imagine what could have happened if we went to the Ministry of Defense. So for me, alliance means to do something to be able to protect each other, or maybe if something happened to one of us, then maybe we could have changed something. But what happened a month ago after the alliance, after both studies were published, after the campaign on the social media, I stayed waiting in the airport for 1 hour, and this is something new. And there were also experiences like we find, for example, kids in the streets, they did some videos, they were sent to the prison and we couldn't do anything for them. The question is to which extent through these alliances will we be able to change, not even to change, to be in solidarity with each other if something bad happened to any of us. And if any of you had a problem in Egypt and you were able to do something about it through solidarity, please speak about it. I know that things are different in Lebanon. You have freedom, you have decision makers. Even if you're not able to reach something, you still can discuss it. But anyway, in Egypt, we don't even speak about it, because if we speak about it, it means danger and risk on our lives. Thank you. شكرا ألما، وزميلنا من فلسطين بعد ألما. مرحبا، أريد أن أقول أنني أعتقد أننا
escape the government totally and forget about them and find new alternative funds, diverse funds, and maybe also we are the ones interested in international cultural relations and so on. But there's an issue that this separation put us in a position to escape a bit our social responsibility. Because at the end, all governments are accountable versus SDGs, Social Development Goals, including human rights that are part of Social Development Goals as criteria. And every country is accountable versus those goals to show development. And I think that we should reconsider our relationships with the governments and also to realize back again that the governments, including for instance Ministry of Cultures and so on, they hold our rights from taxpayers' money. All those issues we put on the side because it's easier, because we know that the clash with the government would kill us, or would exile us. But this doesn't mean that we shouldn't be reconsidering our relationship with governments.
Sorry, can I ask if someone is doing just a very brief introduction to the country?
Yes, okay, sure. So Alma, Syria, Canada, Mohab, Egypt, and she's asking if you'll say your name and where you're from, just so we have a context.
إيمان حمولي فلسطين. يمكن بدي يعني اللي حكيته رواندا كثير يعني سوى إرباك عندي للي سمعته باليومين الماضيين من الفنانين والفنانات.
As if to what I heard from the artists in the past 2 days, because we heard that governments are in one place and artists are in a totally different place. So is it that we're not really examining the laws? Maybe we have prejudices when we speak about the Ministry of Culture and what it represents as a body, meaning it's not giving the artistic institutions the right in Lebanon, or maybe there are laws, but we have this prejudice. And and prejudgment, and we don't know about them. Like, for example, in your movie, I saw Ministry of Justice, not Ministry of Culture, yes, Ministry of Justice. So at least there is one of the ministries. So should we maybe be more aggressive as art institutions? For example, in Lebanon, if we take Lebanon as an example, is it required to demand that the laws be implemented so that the more rights are given to art institutions and to artists? Or are the laws anyway unjust? You said that sometimes you say to people, you pass this for me and I'll pass this for you. But maybe goods are laws are not implemented, or they are bad. So this is the question.
If it's a direct question, yes.
إذا كان الجواب مباشرا نعم يمكن أن تجيبي. فأنا أيضا أدون الأسئلة حتى تمكن الإجابة عليها لاحقا. I also have a comment about the alliance. Alliance should be with people with whom I share a vision and can protect me. Because if I am to build an alliance with the ministry can meet me at a certain point, but they can also harm me. So I need partnership and alliance with people with whom I have a common vision, a shared path, and a path that protects us, and so that we can protect each other and remain in solidarity with each other. And I'm not sure if this can happen with the ministries. دعيني أعلق على هذا الموضوع.
Is that alliances, or let's say relationships, can be had with government or ministry subsets. What's your name? You say that we need to have a shared vision if we're in an alliance. I don't want us to get hooked up on the semantics of it all. I would also like to say that probably some of us who do work with governments believe that there's a subversive necessity that we are actually accessing power that we might not otherwise have, and that we don't, by working with the ministry, therefore agree with everything that ministry is otherwise doing. So I don't know what the answer is, whether we must have a shared vision or whether we might use or subvert a power regime to access power that we wouldn't otherwise have. It's a great question. We can keep it in the air. Are there other questions in the room? Did you say you're from Côte d'Ivoire?
Yes, I'm not from Côte d'Ivoire, but I'm Algerian. Okay, thank you very much, Zaina. Your approach, it's really amazing because you use arts to implement public reforms. And we know all that multilateral partners today, to implement reforms, they drew metrics of reforms, and they say to the country, you have to implement these reforms if you want to get a loan. It's the case of the African Development Bank where I work. So you gave me a very good idea to maybe to have a new approach to implement the reforms, which reforms are also appropriated by the authorities and the civil society. My question is, what is your relationship with the European Union? Because the mandate also of the European Union is to implement public reforms. Is this idea yours, or is it originally from the European Union? And do you think that if you haven't the support of the European Union, you could implement these reforms, these laws? Thank you.
Okay, because we are 10 till 6 right now, Zaina, just give me 1 second before the response. Just one second. What I'm going to start doing now is starting with Zaina, who's going to respond to this gentleman's question. I'm going to ask each of the panelists to move this way and give some final remarks. That'll take us right up until 6 o'clock. We're going to drink on the roof tonight. We don't have to finish it in this room, so don't stress. I'll do a last sweep of remarks, and then I'll ask Rana and Natasha to come up, and we'll, right at 6 o'clock, we'll make a special, very brief announcement. You'll love it.
Okay, so no, the EU didn't pick the subject or the theme or the project. They are not the ones who did it. They just, like any other donor, they would say, call for proposal for human rights subjects, Let's say Catharsis would present على موضوع السجون. We would say there is this project in prison. I don't know, another NGO would present for Syrian women, blah, blah, blah. Okay? But there are donors who approaches us. Hi, we need a project for Palestinian refugees. Other NGOs would take these, dictatorship donations, they have an agenda and they want you to fill them. I always tell them, Habibi, go call someone else who would be your big student and do it. I hate this. If our agenda fits the agenda of the donor, then it would be great. But I don't like when donors approaches you, they have to just they have money to disperse and let's finish with it. Okay? But you asked also if the EU were helpful because we have the EU as donors. I tell you, when we started in 2009 and 2008, definitely with all the refusal from the government, refusal after refusal to do projects, having the EU back then in 2008 helped a bit. Not much. What is very helpful is just like she said, you go, you knock doors, you have coffee, then you have coffee, then you have coffee, then you knock the door of the other political party, and the other political party, and the other political party, and the other, but it's something so silly, doing theater inside this prison. And then you get them to understand that you are not politicized yourself, and that you're not with this one against this one, this one against this one, and this one against this one. And the approach is just like that, and I always approach them telling them what's in it for them. So هون بحب أجاوبك أنت شو اسمك؟ أنت سؤالك بيحرق لي قلبي I'm very very sad for what's happening in Egypt. So sad. بلادنا أصلا عصفورية بس لما بشوف شو عم بيصير بمصر بيحرق قلبي. And أنا ما عندي جواب لك هيدا المشكلة إنه عم بنقول نعمل أو ما بنعمل actually إذا عملنا
an answer for you. If we do something, will anything change? I don't know. Maybe the style that we're using in our association is that I go to them and I tell them what they will gain from it. So we have to show them what's the advantage for them. To be able to have theater inside the prison, some people really had to sign. For example, I knew that some people would like to be on 3 different TV channels. So I facilitated this for one of the persons. They don't care about your project. They don't care about it at all. So know how to play it. So it's that dirty, but I'm sorry. That's it.
You know what I mean? At times with our governments we're dealing with any government in the world. For me, it's a virus everywhere. So we have these kids playing around. واحد يحب الشوكولاتة، واحد يحب المعرفش ايه. حاول تديله اللي هو عايزه. Okay? And get what you want. And what your society wants. Thank you. Thank you.
Also, just to remind, this is our last remarks, so if you want to answer one of the questions that were floated, but also to say the last things in summation. Thank you.
Because in some places, this could be the conclusion. For Lebanon, really I'm speaking only about Lebanon, because you already have the laws. I don't know what it means to go to the Minister of Culture in Egypt or in any other country. But in Lebanon, because we're that divided and there is not only one dictatorship, there are different dictatorships. There are at least 10 or 12. You can divide them and tell them you can get this at the detriment of the other, but at the expense of the other. But for alliances, I think that alliances are temporary and punctual. So if I feel now, right now, that if we work together, we have mutual interest, positive mutual interest, then let's do this alliance. It's not a marriage, it's not a partnership where both parties will melt and a new entity is created. No, in an alliance we have two entities that agree that if they worked now, this would be beneficial for both of them. This is why when I spoke to Hanan and Julian, I told them, now we have a Minister of Culture that has a legal background, and this is something beneficial to us. And he declared since before that he had a problem with censorship being imposed to cinema and theater because it's done by the General Security. So we took advantage of this. We told him, you said that, so help us to work on a draft law. So we didn't go to one of the MPs. So to be able to create an alliance, we need to share the vision. I worked a lot with organizations and associations. Sometimes there are people inside the board and they don't have one shared vision. So if you want two associations to agree on the same vision, it's not something wrong. This is really something rich and plural, and we shouldn't have the same vision or else it would be a problem. The last thing I wanted to tackle, I forgot what it was. I don't know if I was able to answer some of your questions. Thank you. شكرا نايلة. Can I add something? To conclude, I think that partnership is a strategic question. We all need to go into the depth of this topic to see how it should be done. Like Hanan has said, and I personally think that we need to see different experiences before creating partnerships. There are two types of partnerships to create, whether a partnership against a common enemy or creating partnerships for one objective. I always prefer the second type of partnerships. Thank you. Thank you, Ahmad.
So I would like to just add that actually we are in a time that we need more solidarity than ever, especially I feel like this. We don't want to be isolated. So please, as I just want to thank IETM for inviting me, because I was never thinking to come here actually. And please invite us, write us, and talk to us. We need each other, and we need this solidarity to continue working in our country. It's like a very general thing, but I don't say anyway.
I may speak in French, my English vocabulary is too poor, in fact.
For me, partnerships, alliances, associations, solidarity, entries are all the vehicles, the necessary vehicles that we need to have in a world and a society that is fragmented, that is divided. We are in front of people building walls, frontiers, borders, censorships. If us, the artists, the cultural operators, if we don't do something, then no one will do it. If we're not here to generate these meetings that are no more proposed by society, it means that we are surrendering. So we need to build long-term visions. We need to feed something. We need to have something to propose. There is a coming generation And this is our audience. We think for them. We think about the politics or the cultural policies for them. And this is the essence of what we need to propose. So we need to go back to the source. But for me, I would like to say that these alliances and this solidarity should be permanent. Just like I speak, for example, in the concierge here in the station, or if I want to ask something to our neighbors when we have a festival. So it should be done on all levels. Or else, if we're alone as artists, we won't be able to do anything. So we need to try and rebuild organic series, organic chain, so that we would have a responsibility, each of us on their own level, to build our society, to build a change in our society. We are responsible, and we need to find fruits for that. Thank you. Yes, it is strongly political, of course. I don't want to be long. I think that what Mohab mentioned is very important. He clarified to which extent the alliances are important. We have sometimes the problem itself, and then a partnership is created. For example, if we have a collective problem, so when someone wants to take someone into jail, then we find some kind of thinking to create a partnership. And what Mohab said, that there is only another side of it, and it's the topic in general. We had a problem with kids in streets, and I had the honor of defending them. In the beginning, they arrested Azzuddin Khalid Muhammad, a person who had made a video. They were actually doing videos since long ago from the streets. It was, of course, related to the state, whether to people who are pro-state or against the state. And, of course, he was against the state. He was with the Ikhwan, with the Brotherhood. So the state or the government arrested Azzuddin. So it was important since the beginning that the artists would all say something about it since the beginning, like what happened with the caricaturist Dawish. Since the beginning, since he was arrested, all the artists spoke about it, and here social media was really important and influential. So then he was released. But when the 4 others were arrested, things changed. And this was said to me by a person who worked at the prosecutor's office. In the beginning, he said it's okay, they will be released. But when they came back again to prison, because they stayed first for 100 days, then this time was renovated, was renewed. So I said to them, why are you doing this? They're inside, they're not inciting for any demonstration, they're just speaking about the situation in the country, whether you like it or not. So they told me that they will be then opening to the other young people to do the same. So building alliances is essential. This is what I touched myself, so that we can go to the second level. If we want to speak about the level that we have now, this is what the state wants. And they will come out of prison if they agree not to speak about the situation in general. And if they say that they will not collaborate with anyone, then yes, they can leave. But if they decide to speak in general, to make studies, to write an article about what happened, then of course they will deal with them in a different way, but they will have a greater impact on the art in Egypt and on the creative work that you have in Egypt. This will be something very important. I apologize if I was long, but I need also to say something else. all these legislations, or all this, not only what is said is influential, there is another legislation that wasn't mentioned. We found it in the Gazette, in the official Gazette. There is a new law that tackles specifically the artists. What does it say? It says that if you go to any archaeological place and you take photographs, they put new penalties. You can pay up to 30,000 pounds, and this is a big amount of money. So only to go inside an archaeological place to take a certain shot or to take certain photography, then you have to pay for it 30,000 pounds. So the big producers like Soki or others, they can pay 30,000 pounds. Of course, they have no problem with it. And he spoke about love in the second part, meaning that life will continue, and some people find compromises with the state. But what will the underground artists do and the other kinds of artists? And no one spoke about this new law yet. I'll try to do as much as I can, but I can't do everything on my own. I hope that other people also will be interested in this more. Actually, there were more lawyers that were in solidarity with us, and this was a good indicator. There were lawyers that were defending those who were in the demonstrations, but they're also now interested in what's happening, and they have understood what the state is doing now. Thank you very much.
So the only person who's excused is Aurelion, because I think he has some theater to make. But listen, panelists, please stay put. We're really just going to take just a couple of minutes. Mahmoud, Natasha, Rana, if we could turn on the PowerPoint. I would like to respond to the questions briefly as a segue to an alliance that we're about to announce. Mohab, your question also stuck with me and made me think of words like mutual support societies, solidarity societies, where we take the preventative or proactive step in certain situations when we know the state can lash out to us. To let people know that we might need them if danger or a situation comes our way. What we're about to announce, and I'll wait till my colleagues are here and I'll give a little bit of an intro, is about an alliance that can help keep artists safe, that can be reactionary when an artist is in danger. Again, Moab, to your point, there was a case of an artist in Uganda a few years ago. And some of us who work on artist safety, we knew that he had been taken away. We knew that he was in prison, and it was a weekend. And the worry was that if we were not reacted within 72 hours, that we would not know where he would be after the weekend. So, if I may use the word alliance, those free expression organizations that got together worked with the diplomatic corps. We all said, who do we know? Who do we know in the diplomatic corps specific to Uganda? There was the Irish ambassador that was known amongst our group, and we specifically asked the Irish ambassador to contact people in the government to ask about this case. Now, we don't know if it saved his life or saved him from being put in a deeper prison than the one he was already in, but what we do know is that sometimes, going back to what Alma and others were saying, is that we can engage parts of the government, even if we, or parts of, say, the broader space of diplomacy, without needing to wholly sign on to what they are about, let's say. So, without further ado, Rana, and I'm going to stand up. Pardon? Yes, very quickly. We know you're tired, we know you're ready to drink, but well, I'll do the setup. We have 3 slides behind us. It's not a big PowerPoint. Al-Mawrid in May, some of you were here, Nan, others, we had a meeting here in Beirut that was called Artists Against All Odds. Julianne, Marianne, several of you, Abdallah, several of you in the room, Mahmoud, I won't name you all, but I'll forget some. Daniel, yes, how could I forget Daniel Ferguson? We were here and we discussed what we might do specific to the context of this region. And over a few months, some of us have come together to put together an alliance that hopes to have some responses that are somewhat tailor-made for the region. If I could switch here behind me, you see that there are 4 members listed: Al Mawrid, Dancing on the Edge, Afti, and my own organization, Artist Safety Net. If we could switch to the next slide. I like the way these logos lined up. But I'm not speaking for Al Mawrid, Afti, or Dancing on the Edge when I give these 6 points, but I'm showing what Artist Safety Net is about to do, what we've invited the other organizations to help us do with a regional focus, and that is that given the last 10 years and the, I would say, opening of the hearts of arts administrators and human rights defenders and various organizational forms, we have a real moment where there are more safe spaces for artists around the world. I would say the Syrian conflict alone has opened up hearts. A young woman, our colleague here in the room from Berlin, asked me just before the session what one might do if they had a space that they wanted to activate as a safe space. The 6-point outline that I give here is a 6-month online training that we will work together, these organizations, to convene. It is comprised of art spaces all over the world. It's a small cohort of up to 25 from Santiago, Quito, Sao Paulo, Beirut, etc., etc. I'll hand over now to Rana to tell a little bit about the Maurits in the project, because we hope through this collaboration, through this alliance, to include 5 or more art spaces in this region in this training. We hope that all the training is translated in Arabic, Spanish, French, and other languages. Rana or Natasha.
So we gathered in May with several stakeholders concerned about artists at risk in the Arab region, and what is, I think, very important to stress is that by then, but still now, it is really an alliance in the making. So it is really we need to really tap in organizations already working with this, or networking, that we really, that this is an open process. And maybe very quickly about, like, in May we had several recommendations that we can also send to anyone who's interested, and we kind of focused on 3 levels of dangers. So the preemptive stage, what can we do? We have several things that Anna will tell, like what already has been initiated over the last couple of months. Then the acute stage of danger, so which really acts for immediate action, and then there's also the post-danger stage, whether it is in the Middle East or in Europe or anywhere internationally, and then that is also, I think, a very important stage, as we have already so many migrants scattered everywhere, and then how also we can tap into all our know-how and networks to link artists with the local scenes, with the cultural scene, to make them enable them to really continue to work as artists and not just being forced to maybe collaborate with some local artistic project that really is very nice for a few days, but then just instead of enable them to be independent in that sense.
Thank you, Natasha. الفكرة بدأت المورد فكر
thought of having a swift reaction in an attempt to protect actors or artists at risk in the Arab region. In this statement, I will go back to 2 key terms. Alliance equals solidarity in this case. Why? Because we started from the fact that we as individuals are under threat, are at risk, maybe not now, but in 2 years, in 2 months, in 2 years, or in the future. How can we protect others while we are at risk? The only solution was to establish such an alliance with a set of stakeholders the stakeholders who are eager to support us, and because they have a long history and a long experience, this is our first attempt in establishing an emergency fund. So the round table was a call to help for institutions and creative associations to support the region through, as Natasha said, 3 stages: preemptive stage, when there's the risk, and after the risk or the danger. At this stage, we are tackling 4 issues: funding, establishing a fund to deal with issues that have a direct impact on the artists who are at risk and who are in their country or in a neighboring country. Maybe if one artist in Yemen, if he goes to Jordan, maybe he will still be at risk. So this fund aims at ensuring a safe haven and a safe environment for artists and cultural actors and players in order to get rid of this danger and to swift towards a safer haven. This is temporary. This is a temporary responsibility because we're not the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and we're not the Ministry of Interior. We cannot grant the artists the refugee status, but we can support through networks establishment the safe environment for these artists. This is a breathing space for these artists. I think that we have experienced such situations when we had to flee from some danger. The second part is very important, which is very important, is the knowledge by artists of the best techniques to adopt when they are at risk. And we're focusing here on the artist, especially artist safety net and other relevant institutions. And we will start working on a database in an attempt to establish networks between the artists in the Arab region with networks that can help them in case of any danger. What do we have to say, what we don't have to say, and others. We also have the legal part led by the Institution for Thought and Freedom of Expression, aiming at establishing a legal Arab front, which has different goals. First of all, to increase awareness and legal knowledge by artists. So whenever the artists are attacked by any other by any security force or by the state, they will have to know their rights and their obligations, and there should be pressure and lobby in order to develop and amend legislation and laws. And there's an attempt to establish an international network, including associations and artistic trade unions. And I got to know at least 10 associations during this meeting that can play a leading role. Mainly, I'm talking here about European institutions, and that can play the role of a mediator between the artist who is living in another country and the audience, the media, and the audience. I don't know if we can call it a platform or a movement or a program, but nevertheless we are basing our works on establishing partnerships in order to reach a common ground.
Okay, so there will be lots of questions, and I'm going to comment this really brief because I really want to.
Just launched an open course on global human rights online. So it is also invited. Not the one is human rights watch, because I think that this alliance might be represented in violations, because this way also there will be people who are specialized in it, rather than people who have to take the violation.
That's wonderful, and if I may, I know we're all tired. Alma brings up a good point. She's encouraging us to work with some of the human rights organizations, and we do. We invited the European Instrument for Democracy and Human Rights to be with us here in May. And let me give you one of the most perverse statistics that you'll hear. In the human rights world, the value of a life, 1 year relocation, clocks in at around 60,000 euros. In the arts world, the biggest fellowship
values of their life, and a relocation of a human rights defender and activist at over twice as much as we were able to do in the art world. Isn't that a shame? But the challenge that people have given me from the stage today, Marianne gave it, Rana gave it, many of us gave it, is that there are more things we can do. I also forgot to mention that Alma and Rana were also in our meeting in May. I have the last slide. It's my last attempt to be funny. Someone rearranged it for me. I'm sure that my prison jokes click in later. But anyway, this is to invite you that there's more space, that the alliance is not closed. This is not a fait accompli that we've already figured out. We do need your help. We do see the mobility issue in this region to other parts of the world, and that figuring out these laws sometimes is figuring out who's the smartest lawyer in those areas that can help us to navigate, sometimes to subvert the norm and to make space for the artist when they're in need, as a subset of humanity when it's in need. The very last thing I'd like to do is to thank IETM. I think what naming the theme of free expression and having the online campaign that accompanies this physical satellite did for the meeting in May was it allowed us to have some continuity, but it also brought a lot of new faces to our door to maybe engage in this alliance. So thank you, IETM, and thank you, Julian.
This is our last session in station. Of course, if we don't call the late night drinks a session, I just want to give a warm applause to everyone who has helped us in station. Thank you, Nabil. Thank you. For the translators with us. Thank you so much. And a whole list of thank yous tomorrow where we don't forget anyone. That's going to happen tomorrow, so now we can just get out. Let's just free ourselves, get some air. Thank you.